let's turn to some differentiating questions for what are the other top contenders that INTPs tend to consider with some good reason before they arrive at that they are INTPs. I'd say that it comes down to one of the two most common ones that the INTPs will mistakenly think they are before they get to their eventual the terminus of INTP identification is INFP. So for those that, and again, somewhat understandably, these two types do have a great deal in common, and I have an enormous amount of social experience for decades with INFP people too. And for example, I'm thinking of one, an INTP ex of mine is engaged to an INFP, and they're fantastic. I spend time with them and see how they live, and boy, do they get along, because when it comes to day-to-day living, they are just both so easygoing about how the household is run, and they both totally agree, hey, let's not see any other people for days on end, and no one's ever offended if the other one needs to spend a lot of time alone pursuing something without any interruption. Like, they just agree. They get along really, really easily. And in fact, I would find too on the exterior, like the homes and the fashion and all these other sort of exterior cues about type, INFP and INTP share those to an uncommon degree. However, INFP has they have flip-flopped. Their dominant function is an introverted feeling, whereas again it's a different cog function for INTP. They have extroverted feeling, but the thing is, it's flip-flopped. It's like each other's dominant kind of function, not the exact function, but the kind of function. The T and F are the inverse of one another. So for all of the things that they have in common, there are a few things they're going to have drastically not in common, and these questions seek to tease those out. So I would ask someone who's really stuck and wondering if they're INFP or INTP, I would say to them, does it ever take you a while to figure out, or like on a fairly frequent basis, does it ever take you a while to figure out how you feel about someone or something? If the answer is anything but no, like without hesitation, no, I would suggest that, to me, in my mind, that puts you way over towards INTP. This because if there's one thing INFPs know, again, they're leading with that introverted feeling as their dominant function. So INFPs, that's kind of their whole bloody approach as they go about their daily lives. Like that's the kind of judgments that they're making constantly. They're constantly going, how does this feel to me? Or like, I like this, I don't like this. This feels right, this doesn't feel right. And they operate on that basis. So that is hugely developed in them. Not to say that INFPs never, go for long walks, in troubled times and go, oh, how do I feel? But what an INFP is much more likely to be asking themselves when they're trying to sort out some difficult situation in private, they are ever so much more likely to be asking, what should I do about this? But how do I feel about this? That is not a question that they struggle with. INTPs on the matter? Sometimes. Likewise, the INFJ and INTJ, those types also will typically struggle with questions of how do I feel? How do I really feel about this or thing or person or situation? But INFPs don't. So I think that's a very telling question. The answer to that question can be very telling. The other one to differentiate INFP from INTP, I think, is if you're at least 25 years old, if not much older, has it been the case that like at least 5 important people in your life or people of some prominence in your life have commented to you that you take things, that maybe you should try not to take things that personally, that maybe you're a little apt to take things too personally, maybe you're a little touchy, that things really get to you and maybe you should just try and chill out and not let things get to you so much? Every INFP person is going to have can recall without a moment's hesitation numerous times in their lives, in their young lives, that others have suggested that maybe they're a little quick to get upset and to see ill intent or to have their feelings hurt than other people. INTPs are among the last. Okay, so that should give you some kind of a clue, if there are other clues and evidence pointing one direction or another between INFP and INTP. Now, next, a lot of INTPs on their way to realizing they're INTPs or deciding that that's the one they identify with, they will be considering also INTJ and sometimes even INFJ. Here are the questions. Here's a thought process that is typical to the INJs that will sound familiar to them. And if you don't identify with this quite strongly, then I would also suggest that points much more in the direction of INTP. Here's the thing about the super intuitives, and I'm one of them as well, although mine is extroverted intuition, which is a totally different, it's a very different beast. However, I think this generalization can be made pretty well. So there are the two of us that have the extroverted intuition, that would be ENTP and ENFP. Then there is INFJ and INTJ, and they are leading with the dominant function of introverted intuition. And I think something that a lot of us do, is not the only thing we do, but something that we all do quite often and that comes quite naturally to us cognitively, is that when we're setting about trying to solve a problem, trying to figure something out, we very often will start with a working hypothesis as to what is going on that will have come to us through a very intuitive, somewhat mysterious process, or through in the case of NE, a kind of flash of inspiration or a flash of insight based on our storehouses of, information, collected information and what we notice in the patterns and things and whatever. A hypothesis is going to come to us, and that is our starting point for figuring something out. And then what the introverted intuitives will do is, it depends. If you're more on the feeling side, you will probably go about, I would say for ENFP, whatever, who cares about ENFP right now. What INTJ will do, and what INFJ will do to a great extent as well, because INFJ is also quite, for various reasons that are, I'm not going to get into that right now. Others do it anyway, and they do it better. Is quite obsessed with their TI and their tertiary position. They're very obsessed with accuracy as well, and they're also using that TI. Whereas INTJ is using TE in the auxiliary position. But anyhow, what's happening with those super intuitives, also with an introverted orientation of their dominant function, is they are going about getting lots and lots of information, and they start with an idea. They in other words, it's cheating a little bit, Frank. They're going to be so mad I said that, but I'm kidding. But yeah, there's a working hypothesis. We usually start with a possible answer or what we think is going to be the likely answer, and then we begin to gather the data to support it. And INTJ, what they're going to be doing is using the TE to kind of get to good enough in terms of accuracy, in terms of arriving at the truth, because they care very much about truth and accuracy and logical reasoning as well. They respect it quite a bit and tend to have a lot of talent in it, and they pay attention to that kind of thing. But they're going to be trying to find support for this hypothesis. They're going to try and find true, false, and they're going to go through, the hypothesis that way. So one of my an INTJ commentator on under one of my videos was doing yesterday. He said, I think maybe I'm biased, but I think a constructivist approach, and this is the one I usually use, is the most helpful. And I will just kind of quite randomly pick up information from all kinds of quarters and see if it fits. See if it fits this idea that I already have about where we're going with this. Now, I think that some INTPs can use that kind of a process sometimes, and I think that great many of them can relate to it somewhat, but their typical cogitation is not like that. In fact, I think INTPs tend to be very much more open-minded in a lot of ways than the INFJ or INTJ, and certainly all the others tend to be, because they're being so strictly logical about it. They really do start with it could be anything. It really could be anything. And then they're just going to rigorously to like no other type will tend to do, go through every possibility and eliminate it. And they are not going to be satisfied until they do that. Whereas an INTJ, very different thing. An INTJ is going to have that typical TJ drive to gather knowledge so then it can be applied. They want to get the show on the road. They want to, which is very secondary if it's a consideration at all for INTP in a given heavy duty and thought process and problem solving process that they're invested in. INTJ, though, has a strong sense of, okay, good enough. Let's move on. Let's get this going and let's move on. Not the same for INTP. So if you can't relate to this idea of like, oh, I've investigated enough, and this might not be completely true, but it's true. I have enough information about the truth that I can proceed with action. If you can't really relate to that and you don't find yourself kind of thinking like that quite often in how as you go about executing your plans and ideas, you are not an INTJ. So perhaps if there's other evidence that points towards INTP, you should go back to that drawing board and really, really look at that carefully. The last one that a lot of INTPs might consider as they're going along is ENTP. And here are my differentiating questions for ENTP, okay? First of all, go and see Something of the Amazing channel, talking with famous people, that is co-hosted and I think founded. I'm not sure. Again, I don't know who exactly gets the credit for this and that, but definitely a shining light over there is the absolute fantastic exemplar of ENTP, Eric Strauss, co-host. And oh my God, go take a look at that guy and see how much you identify with him, because he is classic ENTP. And again, no time to get into all that, but a terrific exemplar of that. And so here's some questions to ask yourself if you're like, oh, am I an INTP or an ENTP? All right. Are you a like Hunter S. Thompson style level shit disturber who loves to be in the spotlight? Are you extremely charming and outgoing? Like, are you extremely charming and when you want to be? Again, I've underlined these parts. When you want to be. Do you find it quite easy to charm the crap out of anybody with your wittiness and your loquaciousness and your powers of articulation and your wordplay and your playful ideas and your irreverence and so on? Are you able to be incredibly charming by most accounts? Because I would say if you can identify with those things very easily, or if your answer was not an immediate, yeah, sure, to those questions, you are probably not an ENTP. Another one is if you can't easily see yourself, say, crashing a papal visit, as the long-lost member to the band Guar, and jumping in and disrupting the entire proceedings. If the idea of doing that doesn't fill you with an intense joy and glee and chomping at the bit anticipation to get to do something and make such a spectacle of yourself and to make so much trouble, that is so much fun, and like imagine doing the whole thing and loving every second of it. If you cannot relate to all of that, you are not an ENTP, my friend. You are not an ENTP, so just forget it. I'm going to be running out of time now. I got to finish this up, and thank God I'm near the end. The last one is just that I know that some INTPs, people who to me are just couldn't be more obvious INTPs, but they're still wondering about it, and that's what counts. If you're someone who's gone through all those possibilities and you're additionally considering a type that is as far afield as, say, the ENTJ, like you're a year into the attempting this this really rigorous, ongoing, super knowledgeable and informed self-assessment, MBTI self-assessment process, and you are still able to hold in mind it's a pretty distinct possibility you could be INTP or you could be ENTJ. And if you're doing and we could stop, I would stop right there, but this is just too funny because I have actually seen this. If you could actually be holding these two things in mind after really thinking about it with your very able, nimble Lamborghini of a mind, and additionally, you are sitting in front of what could only be 3 months of accumulated laundry that you've just dumped all over the floor and have never picked up, and you are seriously wondering if maybe you could be an ENTJ. I can't help you. In fact, I don't think anyone can. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that one day you get some peace on the matter and you arrive at a satisfactory answer for yourself. So thanks to everybody who listened to me on that, and that's all I got to say on the INTP problem. Goodbye.